Hello and welcome to another MATLAB Helper's amazing videos on stock market with MATLAB. So in the previous episodes, we saw how we can analyze the Yahoo Finance website and also how we can fetch the historical stock data on that website into MATLAB. We also learned how to save the data in the table and also how to plot the data using the plot tool. Now, starting from this episode, we will see how we can actually use App Designer to build an interactive application using the commands that we used in MATLAB in the previous episodes. So to open App Designer, we can just type App Designer in the command window and press enter. So now the App Designer window has opened up. So App Designer is actually a tool that MATLAB has introduced to make app building easier. So before App Designer, we had Guide. We still have Guide in MATLAB, but using Guide is a bit more, time consuming than it is to use App Designer. So let me just take you through the basic layout of the App Designer window. So on the top, we have two menus called Designer and Canvas. Now this Designer menu contains some items, some menus that are helpful if you want to save, run, or make a new file in App Designer. There are also some options that allow us to save or make this particular, whatever application we make, into a MATLAB app, a web app, or a standalone desktop app. In Canvas, you will find options that help us rearrange components within the App Designer. On the left of the screen, we have the component library. Okay, this component library contains the components we'll need to build the UI of the stock market application or any application you want to build. Now, to take you through the components, we begin with axes. Now, axes can be used to plot any kind of graph, buttons, checkboxes. We have drop-down menus to allow the user to select from some options. We have edit fields, numeric and both text. So these are type specific. So in numeric edit field, you can only enter numeric values, whereas in text edit field, you can enter only text or non-numeric text. Okay. Now in label, you can write some information about the user for the application. In list box, we can write some long paragraphs. We have also radio button groups, sliders, pinners, state buttons, tables. Tables are something that we will be using very often. Text areas, we have toggle button groups. In toggle button groups, only one of the two or more buttons can be selected at one time. We have trees to show the hierarchy of objects. We have panels. We have tab groups. Now, tab groups allow us to have more than one tab on the screen so that we can fit more than one kind of UI on the screen. So tab groups are useful when we are building something big. Menu bars, we also have some instrumentation components over here at the bottom, like gauges, knobs, lamps. So, and also on the right hand side, you will find that we have a component browser with an element called app.uifigure. And this UI figure is actually this square box in the center. UI figure is actually the component, or it is the container onto which we'll bring these components, and this is actually the range of our application or the UI. So if I just want to bring any component, what I'll do is I'll just drag and drop that component into the UI figure. So now I have just brought an axis onto the UI figure, and I can just drag and rearrange a position anywhere I want to. You will see that we have the component that we just added in a hierarchical order under the UI figure. So whatever component you add onto the UI figure, it will get arranged automatically in a hierarchical manner. So I'm just adding a few random components onto the UI figure, and we'll see that each of these values or component names are added in a hierarchical manner under the UI figure. Now you'll notice that these names can actually be changed. So if you want to change any name, like if you want to change the name of the UI axis, what you will have to do is just double click on that UI axis and you can just change the name to something more specific to your needs. So we can make it like stock axis. All right. Similarly, you can change the name of all of these components. You can even change the name for the UI figure if you want to do it. So I can make it stock display. Okay. All right. So below this component browser, which displays the components we have on the UI figure, we have the, if I just unselect this, this is actually called the component properties tab. So in this tab, what you will find is the properties related to some particular components. Now, if I choose the stock display UI figure, I'll have the properties related to that. Okay, so I can unselect the option that allows this app to be resized, and no one can then resize this particular application. We also have the option of callbacks, so we can add callbacks by simply going into this section and then adding it from here. All right, so that's about the properties. So we'll have different properties for each component, as you can see. Okay, so within configuration, we mainly have the properties that help us change the appearance of the components. So that was all about the design view that we were in. Now, design view actually helps us make the front end of the application. Now we can move on to the code view to see how we can actually write the back end of the application. So here you will see that we have, again, two columns on the left and the right. On the left, we have a section called callbacks, within which we'll find the callbacks we write. So callbacks are actually functions that perform some particular activity based on which component is changed. So they are kind of related to components, and if someone changes something in a component, that callback gets activated. So it's kind of an event-based function. Now within function, we can add our own functions. So we can actually add as a function the commands that we wrote in MATLAB to fetch the historical stock data and then extract the important bit from it. So that can be built into a function using this functions option over here. We can make a new function by going into plus and then add a function. All right, we'll discuss more about it in further episodes. In properties, we can add some variables. So if we want to use some variable throughout this application, this is one big advantage that we have in App Designer over Guide. In Guide, you have to create global variables to access them throughout the application, right? But in App Designer, you can just make some variables and define them as app.that variable, and that variable can then be accessed throughout this application. All right, so as you can see, we have some code already written over here. So this code actually kind of initializes this application. So all the components we have created are actually made over here using these commands, these codes, and these lines of code are actually immutable. You cannot change them, right? We'll discuss more about that again in next episodes. Here in app layout, you can see the components you have, and you can even choose some components and see respective properties over here in this section. So you will find that within the code view, we have more number of options than we had in the design view, and we can use these names over here, like font name and font size and several other names, to actually change the properties of these components. In callbacks, again, you can add or create new callbacks according to the needs of the application. Again, in the component browser, you can see the components that we have in the design view. All right. So as we move into code, we will see that the top menu has changed, and we again have a few options here to add a callback. We can add a function from here. We can add a new property as well. We can also add new input arguments to certain callbacks or certain functions from here. So we can use this indentation tools again, like we did in MATLAB, to arrange our code in a proper manner. And we can obviously run by using this particular button. All right, so that's about the layout or the window of App Designer. In the next episode, we'll discuss about how we can design the specific UI for this particular application. So we'll talk about designing the layout, the UI for the historical stock application. So till then, it's bye-bye from me.